be going over using the if function, and the first thing I will be talking about is how to set up an if function. The if function is a very commonly used function that has many real-life applications. When using the if function, it's important to know that there are 3 parameters that need to be input. The first one being the condition, which is the value that is being tested. We also have to input the value if true, and this is the value that will be shown if the condition returned is true. And then lastly, we have to input the value if false, which is the value returned if the condition is false. This parameter is also optional, but I will go over that later on in the video with pros and cons of being able to use that false parameter or not. The next important part to go over is how to set up the condition. Since the condition is the testing of values, we can do this by using the greater than, the less than, the equal to, the greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and the not equal to keys. And since these keys would be used to compare, say, a cell reference, like here with B1 greater than B2, or comparing a cell reference to a specific variable, like here being less than 100. The possibilities would be used for the true and false parameters of the function, and some possibilities could be text, which here I just show that with true and false. And an important part to know is that this text has to have quotation marks around these words in order for the computer to output these actual words to us and not show us an error. Another possibility for these parameters would be using numbers. I used 1 and 2, like true and false for stats. You could also use a cell reference, like here I used B1, and these also have to have quotation marks around them in order for the output to actually show the cell reference. Another possibility would be using formulas, like B1 minus B2, and same would go for functions, here with some 1 and 2, and these make sure to have the parentheses around them. Now that we've learned how to set up the if function, I'm going to show you some examples. In order to start, we have to do the same like any functions using the equal sign, and then it moves us on to our first part of the condition. Here I'm just using the greater than and comparing that cell reference to a specific value, and then separating the next parameter, the true one, with a comma, and I would just be using text with my quotation marks put in true and then followed by another comma before the next parameter of if the value is false, typing in false, and then ending that function with my parentheses and hitting enter. And these can be applied to all of those numbers, or here I'm going to show you another possible if function that could be used, starting off like before, except now I'm going to, for my conditions, I'm going to do of comparing 2 cell references to each other, and also using numbers instead of text for my output for true and false, and here we see that it would be true since that 1 is right there. Now I will show how to be using the function in the if function, starting off same as before, comparing still cell reference to another cell reference for my condition, separate by a comma, and I was choosing on which function to use. I decided on making sure that it's an easy function to solve since it returns an actual number to us and not that function written out. So we have to know what those numbers are before we can hit return. And here I made the common mistake of forgetting that extra parentheses in there since we have extra functions in there, which I had talked about before being a common mistake. Now I'll be showing you real-world examples with and without using that false parameter like talked about before. We're first going to show what will happen if we choose just to avoid using that false parameter altogether. So if we type in our if function, it's the same as before, and finish at the parameter of value if true, and then choose not to put that false value in there, we see that the computer just automatically gives us that false value back. But if we have lots of numbers like this and we need to see, scrolling through very fast, which numbers meet our success levels or which ones don't, then we can choose to do it like this, of putting in the parameters for true and then just putting in 2 quotation marks, which would leave that space blank like seen here. So then when you drag it down, you can see quickly by scrolling through which sale values show a success and the blanks that would show that that month was not a success. Another way that this parameter can be seen is with using both parameters, and so here I'm going to show it with an easy way of seeing dates of if a certain date has passed today's date or not. So I'm going to put that in and have my true be more days to go, and then my false is going to be days ago. And so now we can drag that down to all of those values and see them apply. The next part I'll be looking at is the nested if functions, which are if functions inside of if functions. So here I have my grade template with my percent grade, but I want to see what my letter grade is, and this will see where nested functions come into play. So here I'm going to set it up like a normal if function with that cell reference of the percent grade, and with the condition set of if it's greater than or equal to 90, and if that is true, then I would receive an A in the grade. But if not, we would have to ask another if function to keep going to see what the letter grade would be. So here I'm at the part of seeing if it was a B. If that was false, then we'd have to ask if it was greater than or equal to a 70, and that would mean a C. And then if anything less than that, then it would be a D, or unless less than that, then an F, and making sure to close all 4 of the parentheses for the functions.